Hello and welcome to the South Island's Southern Lakes region for the 2013 Challenge Wanaka. Joining me is the 2010 champion, triathlete and multi-sporter extraordinaire, Richard Usher. Richard, once again, this event has attracted a truly elite pro field.
That's right, Rebecca. It's a fantastic field. Chris McCormick, the headline act, two-time Hawaii Ironman champion. We've also got local favourite Jamie White, 2011 champion, and a host of other names here to keep both those guys honest. We've also, in the women's field, we've got four-time champion Gina Crawford, and hot on her heels we expect to be Joanna Lawn, probably New Zealand's most consistent women's triathlete over the last 10 years.
And it certainly is a spectacular course, but some changes this year compared to the past years.
Yes, this year on the bike, they've taken out the one great big 180-kilometre loop, and there's going to be multiple loops that come past Wanaka, and it's going to be great for the athletes and the spectators to see more of each other as they come past.
We've seen a lot of rain here over the last 2 weeks, which has forced some last-minute changes on the run leg.
Yes, the section down by the Clutha River on the track there is still underwater, so they've had to take that out and replace it with some more running around the streets of Wanaka.
Well, it's not all about the pro athletes here at Challenge Wanaka. In fact, almost 1,500 competitors will be taking part in the various events, and there's over 10,000 spectators who have flooded into this small alpine town for what has become known as the world's most scenic triathlon.
My thoughts about Wanaka, why haven't I been here already? You know, I live just near Melbourne. It's a 3-hour direct flight, and honestly can't believe that you know, my whole 30 years I've never been here. It's just a magic spot. You hear about these things and people say it's a bucket list race to do, and you have to get there, and now I can see why. So maybe they should put me on the payroll at Wanaka Tourism, because you know, I'm definitely going to be you know, telling people about this place.
Yeah, Wanaka at the moment looks absolutely spectacular, and it lives up to everything that what people say about it.
I knew I was going to expect something special. I'd been to Queenstown before in my life, but I'd never been over the hill to Wanaka, and I think it's pretty here. I think the backdrop's a lot nicer. You get a much better view of the lake, and you know, I've got my family with me, so absolutely stunning part of the world.
You know, I think the field's the strongest on record here, so that's a true testament to sort of what people want to do, and you know, come down here and support the Challenge family.
It's not a big field, but it's quality. Who's come to the race? As you mentioned, Macca's obviously the headline act. Jamie's won it before. Keegan's been here plenty of times, and seconds and thirds, I think. Rhodesie's been around forever and won Ironmans as well.
You know, old Rhodesy, Brian Rhodes, he's an old stalwart. He thinks he can win this race. We've had a bit of a Twitter war, and you know, I think he'll set a good early tempo. Can he pull it off in the marathon? He's close to home. It's amazing what a hometown crowd can do.
I think every athlete's beatable. You know, it's 8.5 hours of racing, and there's a lot that can go wrong in 8 hours. And what I've seen with this course in the past is if you come in and you're not in peak performance, the conditions here will really expose any weakness you have. We've seen, you know, some good athletes in the last 2 years just have terrible days here.
It's about yourself. Yeah, this event is all about you against yourself, you against your mind. Everyone does the same distance. I can't control what Gina does, or Candice does, or Julia does, or Simone does. I can't worry about them. And if you do worry about them, that's when you get into trouble. Because, you know, they might be on fire, and then all of a sudden 2 k's down the road they might be, you know, grovelling on the ground. Fingers crossed. You know, so ultimately, you know, of course the you know, obvious people is Gina, but you know, not everyone can have the perfect day. Someone else can have a perfect day, and I don't know who that could be. It could be me. So fingers crossed it is me.
Looking down on stunning Lake Wanaka very early in the morning here, and ahead of the competitors, the 3.8 kilometre swim, the opening leg, and conditions, Richard, were very stormy overnight.
Yeah, it's settled down a little bit now, but it was down to 8 degrees overnight. Very cold water here, 14 degrees, so it's going to be a challenging start to the swim for the competitors this morning.
Well, we're looking here at the elite field, the professional field. It is a small field, but always Challenge Wanaka, it manages to attract some of the big names in the sport.
Oh, it does indeed. It's very, very early in the season for the Ironman guys, just after Christmas, so you can see them just starting off now, but among the race favourites we're going to have the likes of Chris McCormick, two-time world champion. We've got Jamie White, the 2011 champion, and a host of other names there that will make for a very exciting race today.
So first off are those professional athletes, and I have to say we'll be looking for Gina Crawford too, who often comes out right in amongst the thick of the men, the professionals, the first athletes off, and very shortly we'll see the age group competitors start, 224 age groupers. And already, wow, we've seen a split in the field here, and a couple of the swimmers taking different routes. And looks like Dylan McNeice is there, very strong swimmer, and we can expect to see a good swim from Brian Rhodes, always at Challenge Wanaka.
Oh, you can always expect a big swim from Brian, but I think Dylan's going to really be the one to watch here. He's got an excellent swimming background, and he's been one of the top swimmers in a lot of the ITU racing.
It is, however, his first iron distance triathlon. The record for the men's swim is 47.44, so we'll see how he goes up against that time set by Kieran Doe last year. So we do have two swimmers now with the gap, but we'll go back to the start for the age group athletes. As we said, over 220 of them, both the male and females competing together.
And we've also got the half Ironman event here, and there's also the teams event. So there's a great mix of categories here for really the whole family to get involved with. And you can see a lot of the competitors wearing neoprene caps underneath their race caps here. That's just due to the cold water. So these guys will be looking forward to getting out there and warming up, and probably then looking forward to getting out again.
Well, they are off, and it's a real washing machine out there. It is one of the warmest of the southern lakes, but unseasonably cold right now. We've had a lot of rain, which has lowered the temperature. So back to our professional race, our elite race, and this is Dylan McNeice. And he is at the front of that field, and he is out there alone.
And here we've got leading female Gina Crawford. She'll be right up there with some of the top guys, and it's one of the really strong parts of Gina's race, always gets her off to a good start.
She is 4 times Challenge Wanaka champion. She does hold the swim record for the women with a time of 50 minutes and 1 second, also the race record. Now this is the second place male swimmer, Brian Rhodes.
Yeah, and you can just tell how fast Dylan's been swimming, that he's already got such a gap on Brian. Brian's an amazing swimmer, and we'll definitely look to see Brian have a good swim and then get onto the bike.
Well, Brian did lead them out of the water last year, but had 3 punches on the bike leg and had to abandon the race. So he does like to get out there, establish some sort of lead in the swim, not such a strong runner. So we're looking down there on our chasers now, and there's Chris McCormick closest to the camera.
Yeah, so we've got a good little bunch here of 4 swimmers, so we'd expect to see, along with Chris in there, probably Jamie White, probably Leon Griffin, and it'll be interesting to see who the 4th swimmer is. But these guys are a couple of minutes back already on the front of the race, so there's some good gaps opening up there.
So it's Dylan McNeice who is leading out in front by himself. He's opened a gap back to Brian Rhodes, and these are our 4 chasing swimmers. So back to the front of the race, Dylan McNeice approaches the halfway mark, and it's now a 1-minute lead he holds over Brian Rhodes.
God, and he's just making it look so easy.
He is a former surf lifesaver, so these rougher conditions, well, he'll be relishing them.
Yeah, and it's Dylan's first iron distance event, so it's going to be really interesting to see how he plays this, coming off the swim with what looks like is going to be quite a substantial lead.
These are our chasers, and they are a further 3 minutes back. So it's McNeice, a minute over Brian Rhodes, then our chasers. And here is our first female competitor, Gina Crawford, and so far no sign of Joe Lawn.
No, and you can tell Gina's swim style. She's got a very high sort of arm turnover, but she gets through the water incredibly well, and it will be interesting to see where Joe Lawn is amongst all of this.
So Gina Crawford approaches the halfway mark, not one of her fastest times with these rough conditions. Moving ahead now, race positions stay mostly unchanged throughout lap 2. So as the end of the swim leg approaches, Dylan McNeice comes into swim exit with a huge 3-minute 40 advantage.
And you can see it must have been pretty rough out there. Dylan's lost his swim cap in the process, but he still looks really, really good coming into the shore there, and that's a fantastic swim in the conditions.
So 3.8 kilometres behind him and coming very, very close to the swim record, a time of 47.56, just 12 seconds outside the time by Kieran Doe. Looking good here, picks up his bag and he'll head over the ramp to his bike, and ahead of him after the transition 180 kilometres on that bike.
Yeah, and it's amazing how much time he's put on the rest of the field there. We still haven't seen anyone else come into the beach, and he looks really relaxed heading into the change sheets.
Here's second place, Brian Rhodes, 3 minutes 40 behind, looking good. As we said, he's used to being up the front, out of the swim.
It's going to be really interesting to see what happens on this first portion of the bike, whether we see Brian sort of try and bridge up to Dylan McNeice. But
back to our chasers. Jamie White in there and Chris McCormick. This is Dylan McNeice, though, at the front of the race. Heads out the newcomer to the iron distance. And he will be pursued by, well, one of the veterans, the 39-year-old Brian Rhodes. Here's our chasers, Jamie White, the winner from 2011. Chris McCormick's in there.
And then we've got Rob Creasy just following Chris in there. And then Leon Griffin is the fourth member of that chase pack.
So looking now, White collects his bag and McCormick. And Rob Creasy having trouble. Tries NZ's high performance psychologist.
Here we've got Brian heading out into the bike, and he's looking really relaxed and comfortable. Obviously a huge amount of experience.
As we mentioned earlier, he punctured 3 times on this leg and so disappointed to have to pull out last year. So he's looking for a big one today. Now this is Keegan Williams
coming out, and we've got Gina Crawford right on Keegan's feet there. So, not the fastest swim, but very, very difficult conditions today, and really just show what an amazing swim Dylan had.
She's almost 10 minutes off her record time. You're right, just showing just how tough it was out there, but she's looking good. She has that distinct running style too, the small steps.
And so here we've got Jo Lawn coming out of the water, just about 30 seconds down, so it's still very, very tight at the front of the women's race.
So confirming the swim times for the men, Dylan McNeice the fastest with 47.56, followed by Brian Rhodes, Jamie White, Chris McCormick and Leon Griffin. Looking at the women, Gina Crawford 59.14, Jo Lawn, Kate Bevilacqua, Tamsin Hayes and Candice Hammond, the top 5 out of the water. The bike leg is undoubtedly the stage of the race which earns Challenge Wanaka its reputation as the most scenic triathlon in the world. It begins in fine form with an out and back leg along the shores of the lake, heading towards Glendhu Bay. The athletes return through Wanaka to begin the first of 2 laps on a new course. For the first time in 2013, the races head from Wanaka to Hawea, through Hawea Flats to Luggett and Queensbury, before returning to Wanaka and completing lap 1. Lap 2 is exactly the same as lap 1, total distance 180 kilometres. So we rejoin the front of the race. Dylan McNeice with now an almost 4-minute lead to second place Brian Rhodes. McNeice, 27 years old, from Christchurch. We know he has a very strong swimming background, his first ever iron distance triathlon. And Richard, you know this course well. What's he got ahead of him?
Well, Rebecca, it's a very, very tough bike course, this one. There's not a lot of flat in it, and there's also a very, very coarse chip on the road, so it's not the sort of course where you can just get out the front and just roll away like some of the European courses or the North American courses. So it's going to be really interesting to see how he plays this. This first section of the course has also got quite a few hills, and you start off actually heading into probably the worst of the weather today. This is into the headwind, so it is a pretty difficult way to start the bike course.
So heading towards the northwest, and that is where the wind and possibly the rain is coming from. This is our chaser. In second place, Brian Rhodes, 4 minutes behind. One of the seasoned campaigners, 39 years old, originally from Rangiora, now based in Taupo, a 4 times Ironman champion. Brian looking strong.
Oh, and there we see Dylan McNeice. He's already made the turnaround and he heads back in towards Wanaka, passing Brian Rhodes. So that'll give them both a really good idea of where they are in relation to each other.
Wow, it's Brian Rhodes and looking strong but gritting his teeth, and you get an idea just how tough this course is. Up out of his seat now to negotiate this little pinch here.
And here we are with the main chase pack in third, fourth and fifth. We've got Chris McCormick on the front there. Looks like Leon Griffin in second and Jamie White in third. So they've already managed to get rid of Rob Creasy off the back of there.
7.5 minutes they are trailing Dylan McNeice by. And Chris McCormick, his first time here in Wanaka, but one of the biggest names in the sport of triathlon. Behind him, Leon Griffin of Australia, a former ITU duathlon world champion, and Jamie White, the champion from 2 years ago. Of course, no drafting allowed, but these three competitors will be working together, each taking turns at setting the pace. And it's Chris McCormick taking that job on now.
And you're right, Rebecca, there is no drafting allowed, but even in a pace line sort of 7 to 10 metres apart, there is quite a substantial advantage, and especially just not having to worry about the pacing yourself. You can pace off the people in front of you, so it is a very, very big advantage for the guys riding in a bit of a group.
This is Jamie White sitting on the tail end there, and as we said, he will now roll through.
And you can see there that Jamie's got the arm warmers on, Chris has got the long sleeve top on. It's still pretty cold here today, so hopefully it's going to warm up a little bit later in the day, but it is when you come out of the very cold water and the swim and onto the bike, it's easy to get cold.
Well, this is where we're heading, back into Wanaka to the start-finish area, and the competitors will be happy to see the sun for now. It seems that the worst of the weather is behind us. Still very blustery though for Gina Crawford, who is leading the women's race.
And Gina's looking really, really strong on her bike. Nice cadence, nice and smooth. And you can just see, she looks nice and relaxed, so that's a great start for her. And Gina's already actually pulled out almost 4 minutes on Joe Lawn, so that's a very big advantage after just 30 kilometres of the bike. And here we've got Andrew McLeod coming in to transition after a bike. Now Andrew's the local GP. He's done Challenge Wanaka before, but he obviously didn't find it challenging enough because he's on a double mission today.
So what we've got online is a 7.6k swim in Lake Wanaka, 360k bike rides, and then 2 marathons around the lakefront of Wanaka and back. So every time I say it, it sounds longer. I've done several iron distance events and realised that I'd kind of lost a little bit of the fear on the start line because I'd done them and I completed them, and part of the thing that makes you know you're alive is when you're just not quite sure of what's happening next. And so it seemed to me that it was a reasonable thing to just keep pushing myself a bit further, and the whole challenge concept I think is just wonderful, just taking people and pushing them a little bit further than you think you might be able to go. Got a jet boat and a kayak on the lake, and we've got a truck following behind, and on the ride they'll just come in and feed me every couple of hours and make sure that I haven't ridden off the bridges into the river and stuff like that. So fatigue will be an interesting part of the later part of the ride. Yeah, my background's in health science. I'm a GP. I am a very firm advocate of fitness and exercise. It's my firm belief and hope that this will do me no harm whatsoever, and that apart from the fact that I'm going to be a bit sleepy for a couple of days and I've taken a couple of days off work to recover, I should be back on deck early next week.
"40 kilometres of the bike leg down, 140 to go, and now the athletes make their way up to Lake Hawea and some of the most beautiful scenery on the course.
And it's quite undulating on the way up to Lake Hawea, and they will be getting a bit of a cross headwind. But as they turn right and head away from the lake, they're going to get a little bit of respite from that and a really nice tailwind. They're going to be hitting speeds probably 60-70 kilometres an hour, so it's going to be a really enjoyable part of the bike ride for them.
we rejoin Dylan McNeice at the front.
And you can really see how fast he's going here. You know, he's cranking down the road. And I mean, what an amazing way to start his iron distance career. You know, he's had an amazing swim, and now he's just pulling away from the chasers at the front of the field.
7 minutes now, that time gap back to Brian Rhodes. The rainbow in the background, and he'll be happy to have the sunshine on his back. So 9 years in the sport of triathlon, and he's really come out guns blazing.
Yeah, and Dylan's always been known really as a swimmer and a good biker, but you know, it's going to be interesting to see when we get through, you know, like what his running is going to be like. And it's a long, long day out there today, and you know, his first iron distance event, you know, he won't know exactly what his body's going to do, so you know, there's going to be some unknowns for him as well as for us.
Of course, after the 180 kilometres on the bike, the marathon run still to come for McNeice. But at this stage, he has really made this race his own, and getting in an aero tuck there on one of the downhill sections of the course, taking every advantage that he possibly can.
Yeah, and you can see him heading down here towards the Clutha River. He's going to cross that reasonably shortly.
Meanwhile, back in the women's race, and it's still all Gina Crawford. And just getting herself in position, making herself more comfortable on the bike. And she is slowly riding away from Jo Lawn.
Oh, and she looks so smooth, doesn't she? She just looks totally in control. You can see her having a bit of food there, keeping the nutrition up. You know, Gina's got a lot of experience. She knows what it takes to do that.
Second place, Jo Lawn. At 4 minutes, a 7 times Ironman New Zealand champion. She's finished 6 times in the top 10 at Hawaii, and one of the most consistent performers that we've seen out of New Zealand in recent years in the sport of triathlon.
Yeah, and Jo doesn't look nearly as comfortable on the bike as what Gina does, so you know, maybe she's having a bit of a tough day out there.
This is a third place, Kate Bevilacqua, the 35-year-old from Perth. And she's another 3 minutes behind Jo Lawn, so trailing Gina Crawford by 7 minutes now.
Yeah, and Kate's looking pretty comfortable on the bike as well. And there's still, you know, there's a lot of this ride left to go. So, you know, even though 7 minutes sounds like a lot, you know, in the scheme of things, it's not that much time at all.
Back to the men's race, and this is the chase group. That's Leon Griffin on the left, and he has overhauled Brian Rhodes, and they're making their way towards the turnaround point at Queensbury.
For me at the moment, the formula to get a win in an iron distance is it's mystery. I mean, I try and do as much research as I can about what other guys who've won races have done and what they put together. And I think I understand what it takes. It is just getting everything to come together in the lead up and on the day. That's what, you know, I think that's what keeps us going in the sport. Sometimes I wonder how those guys that have won 15, 20 Ironmans keep on being motivated to do it. You know, I haven't won one, so I'm hungry and I'm thirsty to keep searching for that, or to unravel that mystery and look under all those rocks and find the winning piece of the puzzle.
They're still trailing our leader, Dylan McNeice, by 7 minutes. So we now have the 4 of them, Rhodes, Griffin, White and McCormick, working together towards that turnaround point.
And the thing with the bike ride in Ironman is that, you know, it's very, very easy to ride on the front for 100k or 120k, but it's really that the last third or last quarter of the ride where, you know, we expect to see some big changes.
Dylan McNeice is still at the front, and he's making his way back towards Wanaka. So changes in the course, smaller loops instead of the big loop all the way to Cromwell. It's still a very tough course, as we can see, but perhaps not so mentally challenging.
No, it's I think a fantastic change they've made this year. Instead of one great big loop where you headed all the way down to Cromwell, you didn't really get to see a lot of the public, and the public didn't get to see a lot of the athletes. So with the new course several times back through Wanaka, and I think it's you know, give the athletes a real lift, and great for the spectators to be able to see the athletes coming through more often.
Dylan McNeice heading back towards Wanaka, looking very much like he has his formula for success well figured out.
Patience. Yep, you've got to have patience because it's not over. If you have a bad swim, it's not over. Yeah, have patience, you've got the bike, and then if your bike doesn't go well, don't worry, you've still got the run. So, yeah, patience. It's not over until the end.
On the day, it's something you can't train for at all, apart from your mind. It's just pushing through when you have a rough patch, and you just have to be determined, and you'll get through in the end. you know, having a few bad races where, you know, you did give up inside, and then learning from that if you're determined and just hang in there, that things will come right. I mean, you might be in pain for a good hour of the race, but then you turn a corner all of a sudden, as long as you work out what's going wrong and fix it. You've got plenty of time out there to do that.
It's a selfish obsession, and if you want to be really successful, there's the lifestyle professionals that do it just to do it and travel around the world and fill up their passport with lots of stamps and make lots of friends and Facebook and tweet about it. Or there's the ones that really want to win, and the ones that really want to win are selfish, self-obsessed people. And you need to be that to be at the top, because this is a brutal game and very, very tough sport to prepare for, very, very tough sport to get your head around, and it requires that kind of mindset. So yeah, selfish.
Great. I mean, it is different for everyone.
I have to remember that every time I race. That's how you got to do it, and not panic. You know, I've got red hair. I do have a tendency to, you know, get panicky and scream and yell and throw all my toys out of the cot. A bit of a John McEnroe. So yeah, I just have to remember just patience. Back to the patience again, and just remember that. Take 3 deep breaths. It's going to be okay.
Well, the big mover on lap 2, Jamie White, who has moved away from the chasing pack of riders and now sitting in second place.
Yeah, and Jamie's looking really good. We've got about 30 kilometres left to go here. He's looking really smooth, and it'll be interesting to see, you know, how the times change over this final portion of the bike course.
Still McNeice out in front, and White now 5 minutes 24 behind, and there's the 3 riders behind White in 3rd, 4th and 5th place. Looking now at Brian Rhodes.
Yeah, and you can see Brian's, you know, he's starting to hurt a little bit. It's always uncomfortable towards the end of the bike ride. But these guys are actually very close behind Jamie and Dylan. And so here we are back with Dylan McNeice. We're not probably 10 kilometres from the end of the bike ride now, and he's not looking quite as comfortable as he was earlier.
You're right, over these closing stages, he's just started to squirm round on his bike, and in fact, Jamie White's taken almost 4 minutes out of him. So here is White, as you can see, looking very comfortable and relaxed.
Yeah, looking very smooth, and you know, Jamie's obviously won this race before in 2011. He's had a lot of other success here, so you know, he knows exactly what this course is going to throw up.
Well, he really is in some ways the hometown favourite from Southland, and spends a lot of time training in and around Wanaka. Loves this race.
Yeah, and I think you know, Jamie will know what it takes to deal with, especially like the rough chip and the hills on the course. You know, how to sort of stay as fresh as possible. And here's Dylan just making the final turn back onto the Cadrona Wanaka road. So it's pretty much just sort of the final stretch into the finish now.
And we saw him looking over his shoulder there, because he will see Jamie White creeping up behind him, remembering that he held at one stage in this bike race a 7-minute lead, and maybe just having some problems there with his legs.
Yeah, you can see him sort of giving the thighs and the glutes a bit of a whack, probably just trying to get a bit of feeling back into them. Yeah, it is a very, very difficult position to spend, you know, the better part of 5 hours, you know, on the bike in the aero position.
And of course for McNeice, the first time that he has ridden this distance in a race, and really has started to fail, and you can see that sitting up now as he comes into transition, and he'll be happy to have those 180 kilometres behind him.
Yeah, and it's a difficult time mentally, you know, coming off the bike. You're pretty happy to get off the bike, but you also know you've got a marathon still to run, and can be a pretty daunting prospect when your legs are actually, you know, they're pretty smashed from the ride.
So Dylan McNeice, he led out of the water, and he will be first to rack his bike.
And the athletes, they get their bags there with their running shoes and the other their nutrition and the other things they need for their run. Just going through the change process now, and those other guys are starting to get pretty close on the road, so we should see them coming into transition very soon.
A little bit of confusion there for McNeice, not quite sure where to head. Here is Jamie White, and he's closed that gap significantly now, just over 1 minute 20. Jamie White, second into transition.
Yeah, and Jamie's looking very relaxed and comfortable. It's a fantastic last portion of the ride for him. So you can see just a little bit more urgency than Dylan. I'm definitely expecting to see Jamie make a challenge for the lead early on in the run.
Going back, and there is Brian Rhodes. Wow, he has finished strongly on the bike. Brian Rhodes will be third to wreck his bike.
Yeah, that's an amazing exit from Brian in the last portion of the bike ride, and from Jamie. It's going to make this run super interesting.
So we now have 3 competitors all within 2 minutes of each other. Dylan McNeice here, he will lead them out onto the run. 42 kilometres, 2 laps of a 21 kilometre circuit.
And here we've got Leon Griffin coming into transition, just 3.5 minutes down, so it's really tight at the front of the race.
Well, still very much anyone's race, and we know back there behind Leon Griffin somewhere is Chris McCormick. Here he is, and you can never write this man off.
No, Chris has got an amazing run on him. It's a very hard time of the year for the athletes. It's very early in the season, so we don't really know what the form is, but we've got the top 5 men within 7 minutes of each other.
My form's been really good. I came from a completely different phase for me. I tried to make the London Olympic team for Australia, so after winning the World Championships in Ironman in end of 2010, I switched my focus. My wife called it my midlife crisis, and tried to chase a spot on the Australian Olympic team, which the world laughed at. And I went all the way to be first alternate. And since then, this will be my first real big bang at an iron distance race since Kona 2010. So we're going to find out if that has been the greatest preparation, because I do remember how much these hurt. But all in all, I can't fault myself on my training. I feel strong. I know I can bank on years of endurance, and I think just getting the job done and getting my head around the task is the key to success in this style of racing.
For the marathon distance run leg, the athletes take to the streets and tracks of Wanaka itself for 2 laps of a 21 kilometre course. Although they still get to run alongside the lake, high water levels mean that the traditional off-road section along the Clutha River has had to be abandoned, and athletes will instead stay high and do extra kilometres on the streets of Wanaka.
So here we are back at the front of the race. We've got Dylan McNeice. At one stage he held a 7-minute lead on the bike, and that's now been reduced to just 40 seconds with Jamie White in second, only coming through 1.5 kilometres of the run here.
So still over 40 kilometres to come, and we know that behind him White is bearing down and Brian Rhodes is also looming, and for Dylan McNeice it looks like a toilet stop.
Yeah, it's very hard to tell what your body's going to do over a long day, and obviously this is Dylan's first iron distance event, so obviously that bike ride is starting to have a bit of an effect on him now.
Well, the 7-minute lead was reduced to 40. Now he's had to stop to go and duck into the toilet, and here comes Jamie White. So a change at the front of the race. It's Brian Rhodes, in fact, who is leading Jamie White, and Dylan McNeice still to emerge. Here he comes now, and he'll be now third on the road.
I'm looking forward to seeing how Dylan copes with this. It's got to be a big sort of mental hurdle. Having some issues early in the run, and now with 2 competitors up the road from him, I just can't wait to see how quickly he's going to get his head back in the game.
Well, it seemed like he was starting to struggle towards the end of that bike leg. Now the stop here, and meanwhile, Brian Rhodes and Jamie White carry on unfazed.
And it's very hard to tell, exactly how fast these guys are running when you just see them, but when you see how fast they're going past the other competitors, you get an idea. They're probably going to be running around 4-minute K pace at this stage.
While it's all action at the front of the men's race, Gina Crawford has the women's race well under control, wrecks that bike, and the last time check we had, it was over 15 minutes back to Joe Lawn, and a little smile there even on her face.
Yeah, she's looking incredibly comfortable, and it sort of, I guess it belies how easily she looks. She's taking a world-class field apart here. She's obviously the defending champion. She's had 4 wins here before, and I think it's going to take a major issue to stop Gina from racking up another victory.
Back to the men's race, and it's Chris McCormick currently in 4th place, and we look at the time gap. He was 7 minutes behind going into this run leg. The gap has closed to less than 4 minutes, and we're only 12 kilometres into this leg.
Yeah, Chris is showing all his class here. It might be early in the season, but he's putting in a phenomenal run so far. and those guys in front are going to be running scared.
Chris McCormick, probably the one man you would not want bearing down on you. And bad news for Brian Rhodes, as McCormick, well, he eases his way past Brian Rhodes there, having a little discussion.
Yeah, it looks like it's still pretty friendly out on course there, but Chris has pulled back a huge amount of time very, very quickly. So if he can hold this pace, it's he's going to be up there challenging with the leaders very, very shortly.
McCormick, the 2 times Ironman world champion, and he's been competing on the elite stage since 1993, and he's now moved himself into 3rd position. Well, another change at the halfway mark in the men's race. Dylan McNeese has hit the front again.
Yeah, Dylan's got himself back on terms very, very quickly, and he's pulled away from Jamie White a little bit again, and we've got Chris McCormick chasing in 3rd. But phenomenal effort from Dylan to pull himself back from the obvious problems he was having at the start of the run.
1 lap down, 1 to go for McNeese. 21 kilometres still ahead of him. And this is 2nd place, Jamie White, now at 2.5 minutes.
Yeah, and that's quite a lead that Dylan's pulled out, and he's looking very comfortable. I don't think Jamie's looking quite as good as he was earlier on in the run. So maybe things have swung a little bit back in Dylan's favour.
And here is 3rd place, Chris McCormick, still making ground on the lead competitors. He's at just over 3.5 minutes.
Yeah, Chris has sort of, the gap started to sort of stagnate a little bit. He isn't taking the time out like he was in the first quarter of the run. So it'd be interesting to see whether he's just conserving, or whether, and for a big push at the finish, or whether he's just sort of starting to run out of gas a little bit.
Well, you'd have to say, though, with 21 kilometres to go, still very much anyone's race. Our 3 leading male competitors all within 3.5 minutes of each other, remembering that this is Dylan McNeese's first ever iron distance race. To the front of the race, and with still over 10 kilometres to run, Dylan McNeese continues to move away from 2nd place, Jamie White.
And Dylan really looks like he's got a new lease on life. He's looking really comfortable, he's running well, and as you say, still continuing to take time out of Jamie and the guys behind him.
The easy, relaxed running style of Dylan McNeese. Running back towards Wanaka.
And here's Jamie sort of coming down, about to turn back onto Albury Road. Still just over 10 kilometres for him to go as well, and he's starting to run out of ground if he wants to get back on terms with Dylan and make a race for that 1st place.
Almost 4.5 minutes now, his gap to McNeese.
Now he's still looking like he's running pretty well. There doesn't look to be a big difference between Dylan and Jamie, but he's obviously losing time.
The big mover on the 2nd lap of the men's run leg is Keegan Williams. He was 6th off the bike, 9 minutes behind the leader, and now he is just seconds behind Chris McCormick. So Keegan Williams moves up into 4th place.
And there's Chris McCormick right in front of Keegan Williams. That's going to be hugely motivating for Keegan to having, taken time out of, one of the all-time greats of the sport on the run. And here they're pretty much stride for stride at this point. Less than 10 kilometres to go.
McCormick holding on to 3rd place, wearing number 2. Keegan Williams feeling the heat, suit unzipped, sitting in 4th place. Meanwhile, at the front of the race, oblivious as to what's happening behind him, Dylan McNeese, still with over 4.5 minute lead over Jamie White through the aid station.
Yeah, and Dylan's playing it really smart here, still taking on nutrition. Just under 4k to go, and he's just making sure that he's given himself enough energy to make it all the way to the finish line.
Not taking anything to chance. Must be feeling now that he has this race well and truly stitched up.
Yeah, it's still a hard time out there. There's still 4 kilometres to go. The legs will be hurting. Everything's pretty much hurting at this stage. and he'll be just looking forward to when he can actually see that finish line and see the end in sight.
We've got thousands of people down on that finish line, but great to see the supporters also on the back streets, and we saw there with the hoses out. Meanwhile, in the women's race, and in the middle of the picture, second place, Jo Lawn.
Yeah, and Jo's definitely not having the best day she's ever had, sort of heading back into town on the end of her first run there.
Trailing Gina now by over 17.5 minutes. Here is Gina Crawford, the race leader, and she has this one well under control.
Yeah, and she's just ticking along there in her usual distinctive style, and there goes Jo Lawn.
So Gina Crawford sets out on her second lap, and Jo Lawn, well, she's yet to complete that first lap.
And you could see Gina just having a quick look of her watch there. She'll now know exactly how much time she's got over Jo, and that'll be hugely motivating for her.
Crawford does hold the race record of 9 hours and 28 set in 2009, and at the pace she's going now, well, looks like she's going to have a good crack at it again this year. Jo Lawn, 17 minutes behind, and this is the first time we've seen her compete at Challenge Wanaka.
And here we've got Candice Hammond in third place in the women's race. Still 5 minutes down on Jo Lawn, but she looks like she's running really well. If she keeps this up, it could be a really good battle for second and third in the women's race.
As we rejoin the front of the men's race, well, it's come to a grinding halt, and Dylan McNeice, with less than 2 kilometres to run, is in trouble.
Yeah, Dylan's definitely, looking like he's having some major problems there now. Hopefully just some cramp that he can get stretched out. But 2 kilometres to go, those guys behind are going to be sort of hunting him down now. If they get to the point where they can see him slowing down, it's going to be all on in that final stretch.
Well, he breathes a sigh of relief now, and to be thankful he had that 4.5 buffer back to Jamie White, but the race is far from over. Still, 2 kilometres to run for Dylan McNeice.
And you can see the contrast with Jamie here. Jamie's looking like he's moving really well now. He's probably closing in pretty fast on Dylan now with the problems that Dylan's been having. It's going to make for a really exciting finish to the end of the race.
And some welcome support from the locals out here on course, and just picking up some of the half-distance competitors. Jamie White, and he is looking good. He's opened up that stride a little.
Yeah, Jamie, the 2011 champion, he knows exactly what it takes to win this race. He'll be really familiar with the course, and also the support that he's probably getting with this being almost a hometown for him. But he's running out of time.
Dylan McNeice at the front of the race. And he's got an entourage there behind him, cheering him on. Just over 1 kilometre to run, and for now, it seems he's holding off the cramp.
Yeah, Dylan will be able to see the finish line now. He'll be able to hear the commentators, but he's probably keeping a little eye over his shoulder to see if he can see Jamie White coming around the corner or any of the other competitors. But it looks like that he's got that cramp sorted. He's got it under control.
To his right, Lake Wanaka. And as he runs down Lakeside Drive, and he'll make the sweeping right-hand turn, and he will be in the main street now with just metres to run.
Oh, and it's such a sweet feeling running down that finish line. The support from the crowd is just amazing, and you'll see all the kids with the balloons about to pop out behind him as he comes into the stadium.
High fives all round. What a breakthrough performance for Dylan McNeice, the 27-year-old from Christchurch, in his first ever iron distance triathlon. Dylan McNeice, the Challenge Wanaka champion for 2013.
And here we've got Jamie White coming down towards the finish, about 3.5 minutes behind. It's been a great battle between Dylan and Jamie. They've been close all day, seesawing on the run, and Jamie's had a fantastic record here at Challenge Wanaka. Winner 2011, second in 2012, and again second here in 2013.
Jamie, tough old day out there.
Yeah, really tough. 7 minutes in the swim is huge, especially with the wetsuit swim. beating, leading Macca, guys like that out of the water with a wetsuit swim by 7 minutes is just huge. And I only deserved to come second today, so Daryl was amazing first time and just incredible race.
Chris McCormick will hold on for third place with a big smile on his face. And with his children, they've been here in Wanaka for the last week, having a great time here. And his two daughters will run down the finishing red carpet with one of the true champions of this sport, Chris McCormick. How brutal is the South Island of New Zealand?
I think today I tasted every single weather system. It was hot, it was raining, it was windy, it was everything. It was so tough. I've raced all over the world and I've raced in some spectacular places, but that's one of the most honest triathlon courses in the world. And to be successful here, you can't have a weakness. You've got to be ready, and I got exposed.
It's about 3 days in one, I think. It's just incredible. I still can't believe it, it's just so hard. And your highs and lows throughout the race, and there's so many moments where you think you just can't do it, but you just keep going. And when you got Macca chasing and Jamie White, you just can't, you can't give them an inch, otherwise they'll just, roll over you. So, awesome day. It's amazing. It's only Wanaka, it's not a big town, and there's just thousands of people out there, and they're finishing straight, just amazing. If I'd had to do a sprint finish, I'd still be out there somewhere.
The race is over for the men, but it's still going out there in the women's field. And it is Gina Crawford. Well, she has made this race her own once again. She was first out of the water, extended that lead on the bike, and has continued to run away from the rest of the women's field almost 20 minutes now, back to second place, Jo Lawn.
And it's still on for a race record. She's had a phenomenal bike and run, especially given the slow conditions on the swim this morning. So an absolutely amazing performance from Gina Crawford here today.
And she is elated as she makes her way down the main street of Wanaka. Big smiles, the thumbs are up. She waits for the children with the balloons. What a great performer she is, and what a great performance today. Gina Crawford, she will break the course record, and she becomes the champion for the 5th time in 2013 at Challenge Wanaka.
And you can see from the clock there, 9 hours, 24 minutes, 31 seconds, almost 4 minutes off the race record.
Nine hours and 24 minutes, 4 minutes under the course record. The winner of Challenge Wanaka 2013, Gina Crawford.
Yeah, it's just overwhelming when everyone's cheering for you, and you get to run around the square, and it just makes it even more overwhelming to see all the people and for them to be cheering for you, and it was emotional. From April, this will be our permanent place to train, and I just can't wait. It's just a beautiful place, just absolutely, it's the toughest race. I think it's going to make me strong training here full time.
Well, Richard, you thought there would be a race for second and third, and Candice Hammond in the very final kilometre has overhauled Jo Lawn. So Candice Hammond, she finished just out of the medals last year, but she will be third place this year.
And you can see Jo Lawn coming around just behind her, only seconds in it. What an exciting finish to the women's race.
And Jo Lawn falls to the ground absolutely exhausted. It's been a tough day for her out there and run down in the final few hundred metres.
Yeah, definitely tough conditions out there today as well. 8 degrees at the start, 28 here at the finish. So, on top of the course, also the conditions, so it's a huge toll on all the athletes.
Candice, that's got to be one of your best results ever today.
Yeah, really pleased with that. Wanaka is such a tough course, and I never forgot what it was like last year, and coming back, I thought I might be a little bit mentally stronger, but no, it gets the better of you, it really, really does. It came down to this last red carpet bit, which is it, I don't know, it's not even 100 metres, is it? So you don't want to end Ironman like on a sprint like that. It was my worst nightmare, and it was with Jo Lawn. You know, she's a strong athlete. I look up to her so much. She's been a huge inspiration to me. So, yeah.
This was a tough one. You know, I came in with not 100% preparation, so I knew that it was going to be running on empty. I've never raced this so early in January before, so you know, I just give it my all, and I came up short. I mean, Gina was in the world today, but you know, Candice, you know, we put on a good race, but you know, I give it my all. I came up a little bit short.
Gina Crawford.
Confirming the final placings for Challenge Wanaka 2013. Gina Crawford takes her 5th title, with Candice Hammond on the podium for the first time in 2nd, Jo Lawn in 3rd, with a local Simone Mayer in 4th.
In the men's race, it's the breakthrough win for Dylan McNeice in his first full-distance race. Jamie White adds silver to his previous gold and silver at Challenge Wanaka, and Chris McCormick from Australia rounds out the podium. Keegan Williams finishes in 4th and Brian Rhodes in 5th.
It's just amazing. It's a huge step up for the event, and we're very, very proud from Challenge family side about all those new changes. The new stadium, the character, it's amazing. With the best field ever, and with the men's, it was definitely the most thrilling we've ever seen here in Wanaka. Gina, an amazing win. That was awesome. So many more people, so many more spectators out there. So we're absolutely thrilled and happy.
Wow, who'd have thought it, that this morning when we had those strong winds and that lumpy swim, that we'd end up with a day like this. I mean, what a day. I think the athletes had a really tough day out there. It was awesome to see a breakthrough win for Dylan. I mean, what a result. I thought it was very similar to Jamie's win 2 years ago, actually. And of course, to have Gina take her 5th title in a record time. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
Around the world trip. Who's from 7.6 kilometres, ridden 360 kilometres, and run 84 kilometres. And I tell you what, he's still married, ladies and gentlemen. Well, as far as we know, he is. I tell you what.
So as Challenge Wanaka draws to a close for 2013, we look back on what has been a simply stunning day. Richard, how about that breakthrough performance in the men's race?
Yeah, absolutely fantastic performance from Dylan McNeice. His first ever iron distance event. He led from start to finish, and you know, apart from a little period of time at the end of the bike and the start of the run where Jamie White caught him up, you know, he just looked fantastic all day, and there was absolutely nothing Jamie could do to take the win off him. And also fantastic for the race to have superstar Chris McCormick over here. You know, he's wonderful for the sport and great for the event here.
And in the women's race, what is it going to take to beat Gina Crawford on this circuit?
I mean, Gina was simply outstanding today, and like she has been for all of her 5 victories. And if she's going to be beaten here, someone's going to have to come, you know, super focused and in super good form and just really take the race to her. But yeah, she's just been outstanding.
So we say congratulations to our champions for 2013 and to all those competitors who have taken part in Challenge Wanaka.